Hello and welcome to a very special interview of our Outlook. We have a very esteemed guest with us today, Ms. Nadia Rasheed, who is the Deputy Resident Representative for UNDP India. Thank you for joining us, Nadia.
Thank you so much, Medhat. It's really a pleasure to be able to join you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Okay, I'll start off with a question that, during this time of pandemic, we have seen it impacting so many livelihoods in India and across the world. Do you think there is a gender specific side to, when it comes to, people losing jobs and, the unemployment story in India?
Yes, so as you've said, Medhat, sadly, this crisis that we've seen with the COVID pandemic has really been unprecedented. There's a health crisis, there's a development crisis. It's impacted people all around the world, across all sectors of society. And it's led to huge disruptions to economies because, as you know, lockdowns and restrictions on movement have been really necessary to contain the spread of the epidemic. But at the same time, that's meant that countless jobs and livelihoods have been impacted by the pandemic. And what we're seeing around the world is that these impacts are felt more severely for women. So the stories in India is not very different from what we're seeing elsewhere. So for example, some estimates show that women have been twice as likely to lose jobs as men as a result of the impact of the pandemic. And even in terms of the recovery, because we're now seeing quite a bit of recovery, women are not recovering jobs as fast as men are. So this is very much a serious concern. And in India, it's moreover a concern because we start from a base where women's labor force participation is already very low. It's amongst the lowest in the world, with only about 1 in 4 women actually participating in the labor force. So it's an absolutely critical challenge for us to make sure that we don't see further setbacks to women's employment and to women's economic empowerment.
Do you think that there's some way we can ensure re-employment of women in India? I mean, what are the efforts that we can look forward to from UNDP in that direction?
So I think one of the most critical things, firstly, is to really be able to understand the impacts that women are facing and the differential impacts that women are facing, and also to monitor what's happening, because it's important that all the work that we do is very much evidence-based. It's also critical that we really advocate that there needs to be a special focus on women and a special focus on young people in economic recovery efforts, because we've seen that it's women and it's young people who actually have been most affected by job losses. So in order to make sure that they don't fall further behind, it's critical that our efforts really target women and young people in particular, so that we can support a stronger recovery. And for UNDP, economic empowerment of women is an area that's very much critical to the work that we're doing in India and around the world. And in India, we've been privileged over the last several years to have a strong partnership with government, both at national level and at state level, and also with private sector partners and with civil society partners that has been particularly focused on expanding opportunities for women. So we've together managed to reach 1 million women with opportunities for skilling, for jobs, for entrepreneurship. And we're building on the lessons from that experience to help support women when it comes to recovery in the context of COVID. And I'll just give a few examples of the type of work that we're doing. We're, for example, providing trainings on digital and financial literacy skills. We've seen in the environment that we're in right now, how important it is to have digital access. It was already important, it's now become more important than ever. And we see that there is a significant digital divide that's faced by poor women, by women from vulnerable communities. So we've invested in providing skilling and trainings. We've invested also in trainings on job opportunities, on entrepreneurship opportunities. We've also provided support for business continuity for small businesses run by women, also focused on helping to provide linkages to markets and access to markets. That's been very critical for women micro entrepreneurs who have lost some of the existing markets that they used to rely on. And most importantly, the partnerships with the private sector are really critical to identifying where are the opportunities, what are the needs that private sector companies have and MSMEs have for employment. These are micro and small medium enterprises have for employment. So we're very much focused on bridging the information gaps to help women, young people access those opportunities where they exist.
So you mentioned micro and small entrepreneurs in India. Do you think that, in a world where pandemic has ended and, in the post-pandemic world, the rural entrepreneurship scenario can be, made better or improved or revived in a way, especially, in areas where women are involved?
The good news is that in some ways, the rural sector has been less severely impacted than other sectors of the economy. That doesn't mean there isn't a challenge there, but it does mean that that's a certain amount of good news. But of course, we know that for many women rural entrepreneurs, the challenge has really been that there has been a disruption to demand for their products, a disruption to markets for their products, a disruption to the supply chain for their products. And we already know that for rural women, particularly from vulnerable communities, they're already facing many challenges when it comes to accessing opportunities for jobs and livelihoods. In many ways, those opportunities are quite limited to certain roles. So it's quite critical to help to expand the kinds of opportunities that are there for rural women. And there's many ways that we can support those efforts. One way that we've been working on for some time is to help women access new job roles. So for example, for artisans or for women farmers, it's helping to build their capacity so that they can take on roles that allow them more agency, that allow them to earn a better income. So for example, that might be moving up in the value chain to be able to take on a managerial role. These are roles that are often played by men in rural economies, but it's important to also ensure that women have access to those better job opportunities. So we provide a lot of training, capacity building, also mentorship support becomes very, very critical because women, as you know, often face a lot of social barriers. There could be concerns from the family, there could be concerns from their neighbors, from the community about them going out to work, for example. So mentors can play a very important role in helping to ensure that women are able to pursue economic opportunities in a way that allows them to pursue their goals and at the same time help to ensure that there is a more supportive environment around them in the family and in the community. So these are some of the ways that we're looking at expanding roles and opportunities for rural women. Another way is really looking at areas that are taking on an increasingly important role. So you hear a lot of discussion of the opportunities for green jobs or nature-based jobs. Increasingly, there are investments that are going into jobs that help to protect the environment or bring in renewable energy. This is a growing sector, and it's important to ensure that women also have access to those opportunities as they emerge.
So, when we talk about livelihood and, employment, we just look at the job aspect of it. But do you think there's more to it and there's some way that we can, actually redefine it or, add something to the meaning of livelihood for women?
Yes, I mean, I think in many ways the COVID crisis has forced us to rethink ways of working. It's a crisis that's brought a lot of disruption, and out of that disruption, we've also seen a lot of innovation. Many communities have found new ways to adjust to the realities around them. We see many women's collectives, for example, that have started to produce new products like face masks because that's where the demand is, and they've shifted their business model to move to something new. So we see this across sectors and across levels, that there's really been a lot of innovation coming in. But we also see that it's very likely that our ways of working will continue to change. For example, many employers now are more open to having their workers work from home or telework. And for women, one of the barriers that we see to taking on job roles or employment outside of the home are these barriers to mobility or concerns around safety, or the challenges of having to balance the work that they do in the home with their jobs. And sometimes for women, it's when the expectations are still that women take on most of the household work, and we see that women take on 10 times as much household work as men. And in the context of COVID, that's actually even increased further. In India, we've seen an increase of something like 30% already, on top of a very high level of responsibility, and an additional 30% increase in household and care work, in terms of caring for families, in terms of caring for children, and so on. And that's meant for many women that it's become difficult to sustain a job outside the home and at the same time take on family responsibilities. So one of the new opportunities that might emerge is really around more flexibility and more flexible jobs and ways of working, because there's now likely to be many more opportunities for teleworking and working from home. And I think it's important for us to really look at the ways in which opportunities are evolving, and to think about how do we best position vulnerable women who are being left behind to access those opportunities. And of course, it's not so easy to do. We also have to make sure that they have the skills that they need to be able to do that. For example, digital literacy skills are more critical, of more critical importance than ever. And we need to make sure that there is a real effort to bridge digital gaps, digital divides, so that people are not left further behind as we see this evolution in the way that we work.
Mm-hmm. So my last question to you would be that, in India, we see a very rigid patriarchal system running. And since UNDP's Disha project is working on women empowerment, this patriarchal setups tends to look down upon women empowerment and, education for women. So how difficult was it for you or for the teams to really work with women in a patriarchal setup?
India has made tremendous progress when it comes to women's empowerment. When we look at, for example, reduction in poverty, improvement in education, improvement in health, improvement in longevity, there are many stories of success when we look at the story of gender equality in India. But at the same time, economic equality continues to really lag behind. So it's important there to look at how we can ensure that women continue to be economically empowered, socially empowered, to ensure that we're really improving overall well-being and development in India. There is a very strong commitment from government. There is a very vibrant civil society that is advocating for women's equality. We also see a lot of best practices emerging from the private sector in terms of making commitments to meaningful inclusion of women, in terms of making commitments to promoting gender equality within the workplace. But there's still a lot that needs to be done. I mean, India is such a vast country that it has many, many different realities at the same time. And for us as UNDP, the key focus is really to look at women from vulnerable communities, women who are marginalized, who are not able to access the opportunities that are available to other women and that are available to men, and how we ensure that those women are not left behind, that those women are being reached um, with job opportunities, with opportunities to empower them. Because at the end of the day, ensuring that women are empowered doesn't just help women, it helps families, it helps communities, it helps the economy when women participate as equal players in the economy. We also know that for the private sector, having women actively included in the workforce means that there are better outcomes. Many studies show that outcomes for businesses are improved when they have a more inclusive workforce. So it's important that we continue to advocate and we continue to make the case that investing in women's well-being, investing in women's livelihoods, investing in women's empowerment is a gain for everyone. It's a gain for women themselves, but it's a gain for society. And it's really women themselves who are leading the way. But as I say that, men also have an extremely critical role to play. Men are essential partners, they are essential advocates for women's equality, and men who champion gender equality also need to show the way with other men. So this is something that we really have to take on together as a society, because improving women's well-being, empowering women is a benefit to all of society.
That's very interesting to know about the men aspect, Um, so, thank you so much, Nadia, for having a conversation with us.